Alright, AP Human Geography classes, here's our second video on urban patterns. Where are people distributed within urban areas? And well, it's not random. In fact, there are three models of urban structure that help explain this. So once again, people are not distributed randomly. In fact, it follows a set pattern around the CBD, or aka the Central Business District. And these models try to help us understand where people are located with various social characteristics and why they live there. All right, and the three models we're going to focus on, in fact, four, but the three main models are the concentric zone model, or aka the Burgess model, the sector model, or aka the Hoyt model, and the multiple nuclei model, or aka the Harrison-Ullman model. Let's get to it. Let's start with the concentric zone model. This is the first model ever created that helps explain urban structure. It was created by sociologist Ernest Burgess in 1923, and he stated that a city grows in concentric rings around the CBD, kind of like rings on a tree. And if you look to the right here, there's a total of 5 rings. The only one I need to really explain, because they're all self-explanatory, is zone of transition, which is basically getting from the business district and creating this buffer zone between the residential and business area. Now, there's a major drawback with his system. It was developed in 1923, so he did not take into account transportation, specifically mass transportation and personal transportation. So therefore, that the residential areas could exist well beyond the means of the CBD. Let's keep going. Let's talk about the sector model. All right, it was developed in 1939 by an economist named Homer Hoyt. Now, he stated that a city develops in, well, surprise, sectors. And what that means is that certain areas attract different types of activities. For example, if you take New York City, we have an industry area, we have a financial district, we have an entertainment district, all right, so on and so forth. His model, because it was developed later, follows actually transportation lines for expansion. Specifically, it follows railroads, subways, and bus lines. All right, and our third model here is something called the multiple nuclei model, which is developed by geographers C.D. Harris and E.L. Ullman in 1945. They stated that a city is a very complex structure that includes more than one center. So, if you will, there's not really the CBD and then everything zooms out of it. It is the CBD as well as other nodes of activities that include ports, that include airports, that include parks, that include manufacturing centers, that include residential areas. These all are different nodes of activities. Now, the problem with this model is that it's not an exact science and that so many different cities fit so many different types of nuclei models. So this is just one example, whereas you could have literally 50 or 60 different examples of the multiple nuclei model outlined. All right, let's apply these models outside North America, but here's the problem. American urban areas differ greatly from those in other MDCs even, and especially in LDCs. All right, they do not follow the same pattern. Well, here are two specific examples. In Europe, ironically, poor people live in the suburbs and not near the central business district, while wealthy people live near the center of the city. So it's a little opposite of the American model. Now, if we look back at pre-colonial cities, the center business district was not located in the center, yet rather religious items were. And one example I can give you is the Aztecs. And if you see here, you see the ziggurats, the temples in the middle, that religion was the main focal point, and actually business was surrounding the religious areas along with residential areas. Now, there is a model that might help explain the new age urban structure in MDCs and especially in LDCs. And this model was created by geographers Ernest Griffin and Larry Ford in 1980. This is our most recent model. It's actually based specifically on Latin American cities. Now, do note, this closely follows LDCs and some MDCs, and here's the reason why. MDCs colonized LDCs. Therefore, they took the same urban structure models and applied it to these colonial settlements. Now, here's a big difference. If you look at the LDCs on the outer ring, they include something called a squatter settlement. In this specific example, it's called favelas, which is a term used in Brazil for very poor urban housing, or aka squatter settlements. Now, these cities are so overcrowded in LDCs that literally there's no room for people and they are pushed to the outskirts of town. In these areas, these poor housing areas, that is, there is little electricity, if any, little running water, if any, and definitely little to no sewers. Now, the poorest of people live in these areas. And also, as you can see, there are different sections that do not apply to other urban structure models. All right, that was it. We'll talk much more about these models in class. I will see you then.